When the truth walks in, lies start choking on their own silence. My dear chosen ones, hear me. People can't stop whispering about you, speculating, circling your name like moths around a flame they cannot touch. They say you know more than you show. They say your silence is suspicious, your gaze unsettling, your calm a riddle. And you know what? They're right. The truth doesn't need to announce itself. It waits, patient as stone, until the moment comes when even shadows tremble because you've entered the room. Chosen ones, this world was never designed to celebrate you. It was engineered to smother you, to twist your clarity into doubt, to convince you that the pulse of power in your veins was just paranoia. But here's the cutthroat truth. It's not you that's misplaced. It's them. They built a stage of illusions, but your very presence rips through the curtain. You don't expose them by shouting. You expose them by existing. Your silence is an earthquake. Your stillness is a mirror. And every mask they hide behind cracks when you simply breathe near them. Think about it. Have you noticed how they call you too serious, too intense, too quiet? That's their way of saying, you see too much. You sense deception before it's spoken. You decode energy like others read text. And that terrifies them. It terrifies them because they know, deep down, you are not one of them. And nothing scares the pretenders more than being seen for who they really are. They panic when you walk in. Why? Because you reflect back what they've buried. You remind them of every false smile, every knife they twisted in secret, every shallow lie that looked real until your presence revealed it for dust. You don't need to say a word. You don't need to accuse. Your silence screams louder than their carefully crafted speeches. And when you don't react, when you simply watch, that's when they fall apart. Because they know, oh they know, you were never blind. My chosen ones, you didn't apply for this role. You were built for it. Destiny didn't spin a wheel and land on you by chance. Number. It saw what you could hold long before they ever doubted you. That's why they fear you. That's why they whisper. You remind them that true power doesn't shout or shove. It simply is. The mountain doesn't prove its height. The ocean doesn't prove its depth. And you don't need to prove your vision. They feel it in their bones before you even speak. Tell me, how many times have you sat in silence, letting them unravel in their own lies? How many times have you nodded while they thought they were fooling you, only to watch their mask slip the moment your eyes didn't blink the way theirs did? They call you cold, but really they're burning with fear. They call you strange, but really they can't comprehend your calibration. You are not paranoid, chosen one. You are perceptive. You are not dramatic. You are deliberate. And that is what shakes them, because they now realize you knew all along. You knew their betrayal before they spoke it. You felt the energy shift before they made their move. You heard the cracks in their silence. And you didn't need proof, because truth leaves an echo long before it leaves evidence. Remember this. People aren't talking because you're loud. They're talking because your stillness is louder than their chaos. They're talking because your quiet dismantles their noise. They're talking because you are proof that some forces don't need permission to exist. And every time they gather to whisper your name, understand this, they're not exposing you. They're confirming you. Chosen ones carry that like armor. Their panic is your validation. Their whispers are your applause. Their discomfort is the clearest sign that your power is working. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't prove. You simply are. And that, my chosen ones, is enough to shake every room you enter and silence every mask they thought would protect them. And chosen ones, if these words are already striking something deep in you, it's not by accident. Your very presence here proves what they've been whispering, that you see more, you sense more, you know more than you ever let on. That's why people can't stop talking. If you've ever felt those eyes on you, those quiet suspicions, those sudden shifts in energy the moment you walk in, then you already know this message is yours. So do your part. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you're ready to claim what they fear most. The fact that your knowing is not a weakness, it's your weapon. This is just the beginning. And if you're truly a chosen one, you'll recognize every sign we're about to uncover because you've been living them your whole life. Number 1. They thought you were just a pawn, but you've always been the entire board in motion. They thought you were a pawn, but you've been the mastermind behind the entire board all along. They laughed while building their trap, not realizing you were watching them lay every brick with shaky hands. My dear chosen ones, listen carefully. This is where it gets uncomfortable for them. They believed you were blind, naive, easy to manipulate. They thought your silence meant ignorance, your patience meant weakness, your stillness meant defeat. But you and I both know that wasn't the truth. Your silence was not surrender, it was strategy. While they whispered lies in dark corners, you were connecting dots in the background. While they were playing checkers with shallow moves, you were already 5 steps deep into the chessboard they didn't even know existed. Think about it, chosen one. How many times have you let them believe they were fooling you just to watch the panic flicker in their eyes when they realized you already knew? That shift in their body language, that sudden stiffness in their voice, it was the moment they understood they weren't pulling strings. They were exposing themselves. You weren't clueless. You were calm. You weren't behind. You were observing. And every second they underestimated you was a second you sharpened your edge. They wanted you to react. They wanted you to stumble, to cry out, to beg for clarity. But you didn't. You waited. You endured. You documented every detail, every mask, every move. That is what terrifies them now. Because they know you didn't miss a thing. You saw the trap, you saw the setup, and you chose patience over panic. Chosen ones don't flinch. We don't rush. We let the storm reveal what it needs to, and then we move when the timing is perfect. That's what separates you from them, timing. They scramble. You calculate. They act out of desperation. You act out of clarity. And tell me, hasn't your timing always been uncanny? Haven't you always left the sinking ship just before it cracked apart? Haven't you always arrived in the right space at the right moment while they wondered how you managed it? That's not chance. That's alignment. That's calibration. That's the power they will never have, no matter how loudly they scheme. And now, chosen one, their whispers betray them. They warn others. Be careful with that one. They're different. Do you know what that means? It means you've broken their game. It means you've escaped the predictable scripts they recycle on everyone else. You are the exception they can't decode, the glitch in their system, the presence they can't manipulate, and that frightens them more than anything. Let's be brutally honest here. They weren't just playing games with you. They were gambling against something bigger, truth itself. They thought they could outmaneuver someone who doesn't guess but knows, someone who doesn't rush but moves with precision, someone who doesn't stumble in the dark because they've trained their eyes to see in silence. Chosen ones, stop doubting that. Stop telling yourself you're overthinking. Stop shrinking yourself into the corners of rooms you were meant to command. Your instincts are not paranoia. Your awareness is not an accident. You were built to perceive what others ignore, and every time you question it, you hand them back the power they're already terrified you carry. Remember this: you are not just a player in their little game. You are the game changer, the shift, the one they can't prepare for because your moves aren't written in their playbook. You've always been steps ahead, and that's why their laughter turns to whispers the moment you stand still. So, chosen ones, wear that truth like armor. Let them panic. Let them gossip. Let them stumble in their own traps. Because the moment they thought they had you figured out was the moment they lost control. They saw a pawn. What they didn't see was that you've been holding the entire board all along. Number 2, they called it luck until your precision shattered their illusion of control. Luck is what the weak call it when they watch discipline, clarity, and timing burn their excuses to the ground. Chosen ones, let's be honest, they've been struggling to explain you from the very beginning. At first, they brushed you off, saying you were just lucky. Right place, right time. A fluke, a coincidence. But how many times can lightning strike before it's no longer chance? How many times can you walk away from collapse untouched, step into opportunities without begging, or dodge disasters like you saw them coming before they realize it was never luck, it was precision, and that's what burns them most. You move with a rhythm they can't measure. You arrive exactly where you need to be, exactly when you need to be there. You don't stumble into doors, they open because your presence demands it. You don't get lucky. You see the patterns others ignore, you feel the signals others dismiss, and you act with a timing they can't comprehend. My dear chosen ones, think about all those times they laughed, smirked, or whispered that your wins were temporary. Yet here you are, still rising, still breaking every script they wrote for you. Do you know why they default to calling it luck? Because admitting it's your perception, your patience, your calibration, means admitting they never had control. It means confessing that while they were busy forcing outcomes through lies and manipulation, you were aligned with something they'll never access, clarity sharpened through experience. Their envy shows in their questions. How did you know? Why did you leave just before it collapsed? How do you always seem to be in the right place? But you and I both know it's not guessing, it's knowing. You don't need to scream or prove it. Your life has already proven it over and over again. Chosen ones, remember this. They aren't afraid of your so-called luck. They're afraid of the pattern that keeps exposing their weakness. They're afraid of the fact that your instincts cannot be taught, copied, or stolen. You've shown them that while they chase control through manipulation, your very existence dismantles that illusion. And now, every time you succeed, they're forced to face the truth. It was never luck. It was precision. It was power. It was you. Number 3, you weren't born to wake quietly. You were built to shake systems until they break. They called you disruptive, but the truth is, you were designed to be the fault line beneath their fragile foundations. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. You weren't sent here just to drift through life unnoticed, politely nodding at the lies and swallowing the silence they feed you. No, you were built to rattle the cages, to send cracks running through the walls they thought were unshakable. You weren't born to tiptoe through a broken system. You were created to make it tremble until it collapses under its own weight. And that's exactly why they talk about you, why they whisper when you leave the room, why they say you're too much or too different. What they really mean is your very existence disrupts their comfort. You carry a frequency that doesn't blend in, it breaks through. Every time you refuse to play their game, every time you see through their schemes, every time you walk away from what was meant to trap you, the system shakes. Chosen ones, do you ever wonder why you can't sit still in spaces where everyone else seems content? Why you feel restless, uneasy, almost suffocated by the false smiles, the empty rules, the shallow patterns? It's because you weren't meant to adapt, you were meant to expose. That tension in your chest isn't weakness, it's a warning bell. It's the signal that the system around you is built on sand, and you are the tide rolling in to wash it away. They don't fear your words, they fear your presence, because your energy itself is correction. Your silence calls out the lies they've been clinging to. Your actions dismantle the illusions they've invested their entire lives in. You don't even have to try, you just are, and that is enough to unsettle everything false around you. And here's the truth, chosen ones. Systems don't break overnight. They erode because someone keeps standing tall when everyone else bows down. They erode because someone refuses to swallow the script. They erode because someone, you, dares to live authentically in a world that rewards masks. That's why your presence feels like an earthquake. That's why they keep their distance. Not because you're wrong, but because you're the only one in the room who's real. So stop doubting yourself. Stop wondering why you don't fit in. You were never meant to. You weren't born to wake quietly. You were built to shake, to disrupt, to expose, and every time you refuse to shrink, another crack forms in the system that tried to bury you. Number 4. You never had to shout. Your silence already echoed louder than their noise. Noise is the weapon of the weak. Silence is the power of the strong. My dear chosen ones, understand this. You were never required to scream to be heard. Your power has never been in volume. It's in presence. While they've been busy filling rooms with chatter, with gossip, with meaningless noise meant to distract and deceive, you stood still, and that stillness shook them to their core. Think about it. How many times have they tried to provoke you, hoping you'd lash out, hoping you'd lose your composure so they could point and say, "See, they're not so different from us." But you didn't. You held your ground. You let the silence speak for you, and that silence carried more weight than any words you could have thrown back at them. That silence wasn't weakness. It was a declaration. It said, "I know what you're doing. I see through it, and I don't need to lower myself to expose you because you'll expose yourself." Chosen ones, your silence is a mirror, and they hate what they see reflected in it. Their lies echo back at them, their guilt gets louder, their masks slip faster. They feel naked in your presence, not because you've called them out, but because you didn't have to. Do you see the power in that? You don't chase truth, you embody it. And the weight of that truth is so heavy, it bends the room around you. They live off noise because noise hides weakness. They drown in constant chatter because if the room ever went quiet, they'd be forced to face themselves. And that terrifies them. But you thrive in silence. You don't fear it. You are it. That's why they flinch when you get quiet, why their laughter grows forced when you don't join in, why their words stumble when your eyes are steady. Silence strips them of their illusions. So, chosen one, stop doubting the strength of your quiet. You've been told silence is submission, but in truth, it's domination. You don't need to raise your voice when your energy already echoes louder than their chaos. You are the reminder that power doesn't need to perform. It simply exists, and every time you choose silence over noise, you prove once again why people can't stop talking about you. Number 5. You didn't flinch when the storm hit, and that calm became their deepest fear. They were screaming for shelter while you became the shelter. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the moment everything cracked open. The storm came, chaos erupted, and the world expected you to fall apart like everyone else. But you didn't. You stood there, unshaken, while they drowned in panic. And that right there is what terrifies them the most, not the storm itself, but the way you refused to flinch when it struck. They rewrote stories in their heads to soothe their own shame. They told themselves your calm was luck, that your silence was ignorance, that your composure was fake. But deep down, they know the truth. They were breaking while you were bending. They were spiraling while you were steady. And nothing haunts them more than realizing that no matter how loud the thunder roared, you never lost your footing. Chosen ones, your calm is not emptiness, it's power. It's not that you didn't feel the storm, it's that you absorbed it, read it, and let it sharpen you instead of shake you. That's why when everything collapsed, you became the anchor. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, you didn't point fingers, you simply adapted. You calculated, you shifted in silence while they crumbled in noise. And hasn't it always been that way? Think back. How many times have people around you panicked while you stayed grounded, watching it all unfold like you already knew the ending? How many times have they asked, "Why aren't you worried?" not realizing your preparation started long before their chaos ever began? That's what makes them afraid. You don't just survive storms, chosen one, you command them. Understand this. Your calm is not weakness. It is proof that you've been forged in fire too many times to shatter now. Every betrayal, every loss, every disappointment was training ground, shaping you into someone unshakable. While they were cushioned by illusions, you were built by reality. And now, when the storms come, your presence is the one thing even chaos can't swallow. So let them talk. Let them wonder how you stayed upright while they fell apart. Their confusion is your confirmation. Because the truth is, storms don't destroy chosen ones, they reveal them. And the calm you carry, that silence that rattles them, is the very proof that you were never meant to be ordinary. Number 6. While they stumble in the dark, you navigate with a light they'll never decode. Their confusion is proof of your clarity. Their blindness is proof of your vision. My dear chosen ones, let's be real. They don't understand how you move the way you do. They watch you step through chaos without stumbling, make decisions without hesitation, and leave situations just before they collapse. To them, it looks impossible. To you, it's natural. Why? Because you're walking with a light they'll never decode. They think life is trial and error, a maze of mistakes and regrets. But you move like you already know where every turn leads. They wonder, who's feeding you information? Who's telling you what's coming? And the answer is simple: no one. You see what they can't see. You sense what they ignore. Your light isn't borrowed, it's built. Through awareness, through silence, through experience, through clarity most people would rather run from. Chosen ones, haven't you noticed the way people shift when you're around? How they grow nervous, how their words start tripping, how their smiles suddenly look like masks ready to slip. That's because your presence exposes the dark they've been hiding in. You don't even have to call them out. Your knowing does the work. You are like a lighthouse, steady, silent, impossible to ignore, while they are lost ships, crashing against rocks they pretend don't exist. And here's the part that really shakes them. You don't force this. You don't beg for attention. You don't need their approval. Your light isn't loud, it simply exists, and that terrifies those who can only operate in shadows. They survive by manipulation, by secrecy, by disguises. But when a chosen one walks in, all those masks crack, because darkness can play many games, but it can't decode light. So let them stumble, let them trip over lies, scramble for control, whisper in corners hoping you don't see. You've already seen, you've already felt, you've already decoded what they can't even name. And that, chosen one, is why people can't stop talking about you, because your clarity doesn't just unsettle the enemy, it inspires the ones secretly wishing they had your strength. So keep moving with that quiet light. Don't shrink it to make them comfortable. Don't dim it to blend in. Their confusion is confirmation. Their whispers are proof. They stumble in the dark because you were never meant to. Number 7. They tried to shrink you, but now they're drowning in the depth they mocked. They told you that you were too much, only to realize they could never swim in the waters you carry within. My dear chosen ones, remember this well. The very people who once told you to tone it down, to be smaller, to quiet your voice, are the same ones gasping for air now that they've seen how deep you truly are. They mocked your silence. They dismissed your intensity. They labeled your insight as overthinking. But what they failed to grasp is that you were never a puddle. They just didn't have the capacity to understand an ocean. Chosen ones, you let them believe you were simple, easy to read, easy to box in. You wore masks of normality, not because you lacked power, but because you knew showing it too soon would only feed their envy. So you dimmed your brilliance, softened your edge, and played along, just long enough for them to mistake your restraint for limitation. And now, that illusion is shattered. The depth they laughed at is the very depth they're drowning in. Think about it. How many times did they smirk at your silence, thinking it meant you had nothing to say? How many times did they roll their eyes at your seriousness, only to later realize that your seriousness was foresight they couldn't match? They tried to frame your depth as a flaw because it was easier than admitting they couldn't keep up. But, chosen one, your depth isn't a flaw, it's your fortress. Now they watch you differently. They whisper, they stumble, they search for explanations because the version of you they thought they knew no longer exists. What they don't understand is that this isn't new. It's the real you finally refusing to hide. You didn't just become powerful. You stopped pretending not to be. And here's the truth that cuts them hardest. They need shallow waters to feel safe. You need depth to breathe. That's the difference. They thrive in surface-level games, while you've always been swimming in currents they can't even name. Their panic now is nothing but confirmation. You were never too much. They were never enough. So, chosen ones, rise without apology. Overflow without restraint. Let them gasp for air in the very ocean they once ridiculed, because your depth is no longer hidden. It is undeniable, and now they know. And chosen ones, now you see it. Every whisper, every stare, every shift in the room has been the proof all along. They talk because your presence exposes them, because your silence dismantles what they built on lies. Carry that truth like armor. This is not the end, it's only the beginning of your rise. So if this message struck your spirit, smash that like button, subscribe, drop the number 77 in the comments to claim your power, and share this with another chosen one. Let them feel the fire too.